Michigan, they're particular, but Michigan can't start till after Labor Day now.
When?
That's what
The latest thing to be.
The latest you can possibly be, we're like freaking out.
We're gonna go.
You know when you know.
Alright, make your Okay. To order at 6:31, please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, roll call. Start with you, Karen.
Aaron Delfino, Stacy Randolph Gendron,
Robert Carr.
Nicole Levine McGrath,
Nick Annabelle.
Mike Russo.
Debbie Sherman, Molly Smith,
Okay, any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. Audience of citizens. Hearing none. Workshop topics.
Well, good evening, everyone. In your, you'll see in your computer, your packet, oh, you have copies?
I have color.
Okay, great, okay. I'll get started as Garen passes them out. As you know, last fall, we established 5 goals to kind of guide our work, board goals, district goals combined. So we did a mid-year check-in back in February, and now we are sharing our results for the entire school year. So if you look at slide 2, you'll see our 5, we call them key drivers, 1 through 5. High quality instruction and leadership, the school climate and culture, strategic communications, teaching and learning framework, and future ready schools. So if you go to slide 3, something that we felt was really, really important, the second year of our evaluation system of administrators and teachers, to do it in a way that makes sure that we follow the plan that's in place. And it really created an opportunity for both Garen and myself as new folks to really kind of interact with staff, teachers and our administrators in a way that really made it important that we establish goals to kind of helps kind of focus our folks because we get really busy during the course of a day. But the observations were a lot of fun of the administrators. Some had 2, some had to have 3, depending on their tenure status, as well as a mid-year check-in, as well as the end of the year evaluation. So we do have a digital platform, which makes it really nice. Folks can fill it out, and then we can meet and give feedback. So it's worked really, really well. We found that convenience there. The feedback I've gotten so far from the administrators as we're wrapping up the end of the year, we did extend it for a few days because we did have 5 snow days. So kind of be fair to everyone to be able to complete it. So, but you'll see on slide 3, the work that we've done, particularly the progress at the bottom in regards to working in our schools. And I don't know if you, because I know you've done some walkthroughs too, so I don't know if you want to touch on that or save it for the next.
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of the feedback. We'll continue to do that. I mean, that it's really important as a school district to follow the evaluation plan, so it's very clear to our staff how they will be evaluated and held accountable for the work that we do here.
And that's reviewed periodically. We meet as a team. Eric leads our PDEC committee, and so this says next week, but the meeting was actually this weekend. We were able to sort of review the year in sum, and then we can make any revisions. The only revision that we really talked about was around dispute resolution process within the evaluation piece.
Any questions or comments on this one? Okay, all right, second one, I'm going to take this.
Yeah, so another goal that we had this year was around the school climate implementation of the new school climate, Connecticut school climate policy. And I think that there was a lot, we've talked about this, there was a lot of, I think, worry, consternation around what this would look like this year. And I think, you know, our principals really did a great job last year getting ahead of it, understanding what it is that they would need to do. We all did trainings together. We met over the summer, met at the start of the year to talk about sort of what the goal plans would look like, what the improvement plans would look like, how to put together committees, and how to make it meaningful so that this wasn't just, you know, another committee and it didn't really mean anything. And so what the schools did, to their credit, was really talk about their goals as buildings, sort of like what is the work that we want to do as buildings. They talked about revising mottos. They talked about what did things feel like in school. You know, at the middle school, they talked a lot with students about how things feel. They talked about the hometown heroes. At the elementary schools, they talked a lot about their school spirit mottos and the things that they hold kids to, like being star students or being hawks, and how those are really embedded in the fabric of the school. And I think that that made it more meaningful. So even getting parent involvement, teacher involvement, para involvement. At the upper levels, we had student involvement. High school was much more closely aligned to the NEAS process, as everything was this year. But I think overall, it was a more meaningful process than any of us really knew. You know, we didn't know what to expect, and we thought it was gonna be quite cumbersome. I think there are elements of it that there's certainly a paperwork element. Fortunately, we work really closely together. I meet with the principals who are the climate coordinators for the buildings, regularly throughout the year. I approve their plans by mid-year, and then we talk about progress throughout the year. We'll continue that, same model next year. And we're actually gonna meet again this summer just to talk about any tweaks that we have to make, or, you know, how would the paperwork work? Do we need to make any changes to that? You know, we have some leeway in terms of what things look like, as long as it has all of the, ins and outs for the state policy. So, we're gonna sort of do a review of all of the paperwork, the minutia of it, and just make sure that that felt good and served its purpose. Principals have already reached out to their committee members to see if people are interested in continuing on the committees next year. By and large, people are. They'll reach out and fill the gaps, if people are ready to move on. And I think it's also given us some recommendations for professional learning. And we'll talk about that, you know, as we go through the presentation as well. You know, Eric and I have talked a lot about sort of where we've been, where we want to go. And my philosophy of professional learning has always been, because we're working with kids, hearts and minds. Because, you know, we have to take care of teachers and what they're doing. We have to make sure that we're supporting them in the classroom, and we have to attend to all the academics. And so one of the recommendations and mandates through this Connecticut School Climate Policy is to work through some lens related to restorative practices. And that can look a lot different, and people are doing that in a lot of different ways. We're trying to figure out what works best for us, because we have a lot of good things that are already going on in terms of how we operate as buildings. Like I said, we have our star students, we have our hawk students, we have a lot of systems in place already. So we're already meeting a lot of those requirements. We want to make sure that we're also supporting our teachers with students that are experiencing really challenging behaviors, and what that looks like in the classroom and across the school building. So I think this year has given us a lot of information about what professional learning could look like for next year. And so Eric and I are going to be working on that with the principals over the summer, to really delineate a clear path forward.
Any questions on that one?
Were there any concerns? I mean, we went in with concerns that, do we have enough staff to manage the changing roles?
Mhm.
Did we feel that we were adequately staffed? Did we feel like some of the buildings were overstressed with paperwork from this?
Yeah, from paperwork, I don't think, I think overall, you know, we're noticing an increase in significantly challenging behaviors, particularly at the elementary levels. Having Karen, the assistant principal, split across the elementary schools this year has just been critical in supporting the work. I really don't know how we would have done it without having somebody else there to respond to emergencies and just respond to things going on in the classroom. We have some kiddos that are having a really hard time. And we also have kids that are doing really well, and we want to make sure that we're creating classroom environments that support our kids that are struggling, and also are attuned to the kids that are, you know, ready to move forward. And so that delicate balance has been something that we've been looking at this year. I would say that if anything, you know, that support has been more critical than the paperwork aspect, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Goal number 3, regarding communications. As you know, back in February, we had the findings of a communication audit and the draft of a 3-year possible communications plan from the consultant that we brought in. With the successful passage of our school budget, we are in the process of hiring a part-time director of communications. We had 5 applicants. We interviewed all 5, Garen and I. We narrowed it down to 3. We did a committee round last week, and our goal is to have you meet with the person prior to the June 23rd meeting. So we're making progress. So now we're in the phase of, checking references, things like that. Okay, and then, part of that as well, right now we are moving forward with the communication side of an upgrade of, using a Parent Square. It's a popular platform that's out there. We're holding off on the website part until we can secure the person, because we really want the part-time person to be there from the immediate, start rolling over our current website. They understand how it works, the mechanics of it, so we simply just don't roll over our website. And it's the exact same thing that it is, so we really wanna have the wow factor. And, what's nice is we can construct the website behind the scenes, leave the current one, and then, have it ready for the rollout. Ideally, it would be nice to have it, somewhere, in the fall. I can't give exact date, because depending on the new person starting and all of that, because there's a lot of learning that's gotta go, very quickly here with this position. It's really important, but the communication side will be in place for the start of school in August. And the corresponding app that goes with that, so, parents would get the alerts through the phone, through the app, as well as, pushing out letters and things like that, so. But we're very excited, and it's a big undertaking, when you move from our current communication system, our texting, our email, to the new platform. So, we're very excited about that. So I don't know if there's anything else along those lines.
No.
Any questions with that? Goal 4?
Not that I'm biased or anything, but this is my favorite part, teaching and learning framework. So, we really wanted to assess, the state of schools and get an understanding of the professionals that we were working with, both from a leadership standpoint and, within the classroom and beyond. So, my favorite, I think, part that I got to do this year in general is go on walkthroughs with all of our building administrators and really see, a wide variety of classroom instruction. And talk with building administrators about their goals, about teacher goals. I did some observations of our non-tenured staff, and be able to match those together to see, really what the critical work was from the teacher lens, from the administrator lens, and then also through the various plans that we have in place, school improvement plans, NEAS goals, those sort of things. Aligning all of that has led to some work that Eric and I are doing to put together a really cohesive professional learning plan for next year, so that we're outlining not only everything that we're doing on those full day district professional learning days, but the half days that we have, and also the Wednesday after school meetings that we have. The focus for next year is going to be professional learning all the way. We have to make some movement with our scores, particularly in math. We'll go through what some of that looks like. It needs to be a laser focus. You're gonna see that I put the words laser focus in here multiple times. We've had some of our buildings come and talk about the incredible strides that we've made in literacy over the past few years. Stacey Mullinax did an incredible job talking about those strides that we made when she came to talk to the board. We need to be able to replicate that model and do the same thing in math. And I think that came through loud and clear, not only in looking at the buildings, but in talking to the building administrators and talking with the teachers about what they want to learn and what they want to implement next. There's a lot of new things going on right now in math instruction. We're excited to bring up that pre-K STEM coach, pre-K 5 STEM coach on board, really try to replicate that literacy model that we've had in place with Stacy. So we're hoping that we'll be able to bring back just as exciting data, in next year and then in the coming years related to math, because that has to be our focus area. And you'll see as we go through, we'll show some data that you've already seen as part of, our annual assessment report, because we don't have the new data, yet, but, it's clear. I mean, we can't step around it. Math is the area that we have to focus on. But I think overall, a piece of this was, that focus on, what are the scores, what are the numbers telling us, what's the data, and then also just getting to know the professionals that we're working with. We have extremely high caliber teachers and professionals and leaders in the district, and getting to watch them work was really a gift this year. It was truly the joy of my year, and I know that Ralph has held his staff chats and classroom visits, and me getting to go on those walkthroughs with the leadership team, it has been really, really incredible. We met as an admin council last week, and we're able to talk about what that professional learning plan is starting to look like. And so Eric and I are going to be working closely with the principals over the summer to flesh that out.
Questions? All right, next one, this year we conducted a 10-year capital improvement plan. We also had that presentation back in February. In excess of $75 million worth of work, has been identified. Unfortunately, we did not allocate any money towards that, the fiscal year 27 budget from the town. So, and remember, I mean, that's current dollars. There's an inflationary index, but also there may be things that will need to be added that, either break or start to have issues with that may add to that. So, it's definitely something that, the facilities committee will have to look at, but it's hard to chip away at it when you don't have the appropriate resources for it. So, but, it is at least now we have a document that helps us with our advocacy work. But, we take a really close look. There's some significant, pieces of equipment, of our facilities that need it. I mean, we sit here today operating a high school one boiler. We're looking for ways for an $80,000 repair, to make that happen. So, we're trying to juggle it and closing the books for this year. So that's just one example, that we're dealing with currently. And that, you really need multiple boilers to run a building of that size. So, those are the things that kind of that are very concerning to us. Any questions or comments on that? Bobby?
So. And I already know the answer to this question, but I have to ask it anyway. What was done, if anything, to speak with the town, about this particular, study that was done? I know there was a conversation, I understand that. Was it completely rebuffed? Was it completely just like, yeah, you're not gonna get it? Or was it a conversation? This is a question for Mike too. Or was it a question, or was it just like, yeah, we just can't do it right now? Was it ignored by the town? Was it, maybe we could do something next year?
Well, I can tell you that the meetings that we were at, Noah was there, the Board of Finance meetings, and I think some board members were too, they talked about possibly setting up an account. Having a bucket of money that either that would be recurring, that we could chip away. So I thought that's the kind of direction they were going. I mean, obviously they had our report, we sent it to them. We sent them our revised one in January, the 985,000 items there in priority order. And some of those that we took care of the first two, what I mean, which in my mind takes money away from kids and staff.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like the new classroom next door here and the fire panel at QFS. So, we made some really good faith efforts we couldn't wait, like we have to, but, yeah, it was disappointing. I'm very disappointed that, we're not adequately funded, for the facilities.
I just wanna make it clear, this is not a referendum on you or Garen or you, Mike. Like, I wanted it out in the public that we asked for it and we didn't get it. And we have a $75 million shortfall on stuff that's just gonna get more expensive.
Right, and it's not just, I'm sorry, Deb, it's not just that, but it's also that we all voted on, what you all voted on in January, that we sent the list, because there's a statutory deadline that we had to get. Not $1 towards that $955,000. So besides the 75 million, this is what we thought, these 6 items are high priority here, and we didn't get anything towards it.
Thank you.
Deb, you were gonna say something?
Yeah,
sorry.
it's okay.
Yeah.
So when we were at that meeting, the discussion was exactly that, that they were Jack wanted to create an account. That they would be responsible for putting this money in, and then they would take over managing the projects.
The board of finance would,
Correct.
not Herman and his
No.
deal.
No, that it
Okay.
would come through the board of finance.
Better.
And then, I don't think they have the authority under the charter.
No.
So then it kind of died off and there was no further discussion of any capital money when we were.
Okay.
I've had conversations directly and indirectly on the topic. And they've been, I won't say the word, they're not saying no. But redirect conversations. But they didn't say yes either. So some of the redirects are, we're gonna look to do, the parking lot at Quaker. Great. I don't know how much that's gonna cost, 500,000,
Yeah.
somewhere on there. That, Heinz, as a grant,
That
and
number item for legislature.
right, that we might get that. Great, but $76 million is gonna turn into 80 million dollars.
5 years will be hard.
And it's not gonna go away. I've asked, can we have, some kind of committee set up between the board and the town? And I wasn't told no, but I also wasn't told yes, and we haven't moved forward on that. So we're not gonna stop because the buildings aren't gonna fix themselves.
Right.
It's just,
Again, I asked the question to put it out in the public, not as a referendum of anybody here. But
But
I want it out there. If the town's not doing what they should be doing, the board of finance isn't doing what they should be doing, then it needs to be public knowledge that we have stuff that's falling apart and nothing's being done.
Anything else on that one? Okay, we put together some achievement information.
Yeah,
I'm
so
gonna share
the
that.
next 3 slides, that's data that you've already seen. That's straight from Eric's presentation in the fall on our assessment data. What I did was take all of the charts that Eric did and I asked AI to make me a really cool graphic. So the first 2 charts are the sort of a summary. It shows that in literacy, we are substantially higher than the state scores. We can still do better. And that has to be the sort of drum that we beat year over year. We've seen incredible growth. We can still see more growth in literacy. The second slide on that data is math. And while you'll see that we are still above the state average, especially at GOES, this is where we really have critical work to do. That third slide on data is high school information. You'll see the SAT scores and the graphs on the right. Those are directly from Eric's presentation. So is that table at the bottom. I just condensed it into one table so you can see grade 9, 10, 11 scores, reading, writing, and math. And you'll see that by and large, our math scores, while they still are above the state scores, they are not where they need to be. So what we're looking at is across the board, again, this laser focus on math instruction, intervention strategies, and improving performance. So while we continue to exceed state performance across all areas, that's not quite good enough for what we need to do. And I think that, beating that drum year over year is gonna re-energize some of the work. Any questions on that data? Yeah.
I don't fully understand the SAT data. Can you explain that? Like, when you say Oxford got 64, is that 64%? Is it 64 students who are over above?
Sorry, Eric, do you want to speak about the high school data a little bit?
It was taken from the report, that's always, percentage of students at or above benchmark.
All right, so of the students who took the PSAT in the fall, 64% of them got above or
This last year's data,
Yeah.
for reading and
Yeah,
writing,
math.
but for math, it's
Yes.
considerably lower.
Correct.
Okay, and then we were talking about how we were gonna try to get like a class together or something to help boost those scores, but that didn't make it into the budget and didn't get approved.
So with the SAT piece, there's a couple things. Yes, so last year did reach out to a couple companies, couldn't make it work out. I am working with the department head for next year. Working on some curriculum pieces to embed more SAT practice in that aligns to the curriculum. I'm also, it's a junior level math. I'm meeting with a teacher on Friday. My plan next year is to kind of embed myself into one class. We're gonna, the hope is to build almost like a learning lab class where we work on standard-based data, small group instruction, the SAT practice, again, aligned to the curriculum, we're not gonna teach what we normally teach. It's how do we harp on like kind of that SAT practice within the curriculum as well? Almost create like a lab class where we can invite other teachers in to see how's it going. And since the juniors kind of take the PSAT and the SAT, we're gonna look to see if we make a difference with that data. I'm also gonna work, now that we have the full year, the counselor and I are gonna see what options we have with some SAT practice stuff with whether it's staff and see if we can do it locally as well, even though we don't have like the budget to bring in numerous people, over the course of months and so forth.
So GOES is Blue Ribbon That's fantastic, right? And my question is, are we doing a good job at Great Oak and then goes, and then something's falling off at the middle school? Or, I mean, I know we used to have the math literacy guy who's now, is he, I don't know, can't remember what the plan is for him. Is he going, is?
There's a
Rich going back
math,
to
the
that?
budget included a P5, which are from math to STEM, but the
Okay.
main focus will be math for next year for the new person.
But he wasn't at the middle school, he was at Quaker.
Quaker and,
Okay,
and goes.
okay, so. What, I mean, thoughts on,
Yeah, it's not a,
What happens
you
after
know,
we get out of
this
this building?
school issue type thing. If you do look at, you know, we've talked about this for the past couple of years, the imbalance of support at the schools, which we're looking to rectify with some of the positions we put in. So, you know, GOES does have, like a lot of the sport does have that
Yeah.
intervention slash coach. They have that position where that got taken out of a Quaker, but they got moved to another position and so forth, and that's the hope. So with the K-5 or the pre-K-5 STEM coach, the focus will be math. You know, to start and a heavy focus on math, so we have kind of that Stacy equivalent on the math side, like we talked about it. Because it's desperately needed at the K2 level, but also just K5 overall. So even though Blue Ribbon School, we're sending a high percentage of kids that are proficient in math, per our assessments, we're still have 30%, 25% of the students who are not, right? And as you start to bump up to more difficult math, those 25, 30% who are struggling are gonna struggle even more. And when you get to the middle school, you know, one of the reasons we talked about having the department head 612 and not 912 is, you know, when you look the past couple of years, the middle schools probably had the least amount of support in regards to oversight of content-specific leaders supporting that work, to where someone's in the building every day doing that work. So, you know, they don't have coaches, they didn't have the department head piece. They have me coming in here and there, can't be there every single day. But now with the department head piece, you know, even this past year, we're able to identify some areas of focus for next year. Working with, Garen on the PL plan for next year and what that's gonna look like. We've already had conversations with the department heads in regards to, you know, minimum amount of time, what monthly work looks like down there. And because of their work of meeting with the teachers, identifying some of those issues, that'll be the work next year. So I think between K-5, well, department heads will finally have some sort of balance of support, both in literacy and math, and it'll be even. When, you know, I've been doing the interviews for the STEM coach, and, you know, we talk about what we're looking for. You know, I'm honest with them, it's because of state laws and, you know, we gotta have this literacy requirement, or state laws around our assessments for literacy, that we're forced to go out and pay for this and pay for this and send this to the state. You know, time, energy, allocation to human capital, it has been 70-30, 80-20 literacy, math, and a lot of that is because obviously the state side, we had to do those certain things and spend that ton of money on the literacy stuff. You know, but I think it's time we do start to kind of look at balancing that out.
so if I could play devil's advocate for just a second here. So part of the criticism we get every year about our budget is we're top heavy. Okay, and I disagree with that. Wholeheartedly, we're not top heavy, we have what we need and we're not asking for anything else. So I guess my question to Eric or Gary, either one of you guys, is there a focus not only on bringing in, you know, that person that is gonna help with the curriculum and all that stuff? Have we addressed the curriculum that we're teaching as well?
That's part of that's part of the process. Like
Okay.
if we look at the work that we've done with Stacy, right? There's a ton of curriculum work in there. It's not just coaching in regards to instructional resources. It's like, I've said this before, there's no program out there, or else every district would have it,
Right.
where you can buy a program, here you go, teachers, this works, or else every district would be using it, right? So the amount of work that's gone into HMH and the reading to make it one that works, and we've seen some great progress over the past couple of years because of the work that we put in. You know, not just Stacy, but the teachers, there's a ton of work behind the scenes that Stacy's doing with the teachers, that teachers are doing during the summer, the grade level meetings, the work we're doing, redoing pacing, modifying assessments because they don't fully align the way they're done. All that work we have not done on the math side, because we just don't have that person every single day embedded in there doing that work. So that position is very heavy on the curriculum side.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna piggyback off that. So we're gonna have a math coach at pretty much Quaker. We have one here at Goes. We don't have one at the middle school. We have, department heads that are gonna work from 6 to 12.
Mhm.
We don't have any interventionists, any coaches at the math level, correct?
At the middle school?
Middle school?
There's a math and a ELA intervention at the middle school. Same thing with the high school.
Okay.
Each school has one. So we are balanced. Next year, once we make this hire with the STEM coach, this will be the first time since I've been here at least that we've been balanced across the district in regards to the support with math and literacy.
Cause nothing, data doesn't flip on overnight.
Mhm.
But there is a point where we have to look at the resources we have at the middle school and go, is it enough?
Mhm.
Because whether they need tutors, whether they need more than just one interventionist,
Mhm.
you know, for math, if we're gonna really laser focus, for next budget, you know, it's not gonna be in this year's budget, we've already spent it before July 1st hits. We might have to start looking at what are the additional pieces.
Yes, I will say alongside that, we're taking a critical eye on supporting teachers in the classroom. The biggest way to make an impact, the highest leverage that we're going to have is the instruction that's happening, tier 1 instruction in the classroom. So intervention services are incredible, and the kids that need intervention, and kids that need intervention outside of the classroom, need intervention outside of the classroom. But the single highest leverage point is going to be tier 1 instruction. And that's what Eric and I have been talking about in terms of those instructional practices that are happening for all students. And really making sure that teachers are supported and understand how to do that and align. It's not uncommon. I come from a middle school background, you guys know, and what I would often hear is, not always understanding the standards that came before, in the year before. And so really helping people understand year over year what those standards look like in math. We've done a lot of that work in literacy, in helping folks understand what that continuum looks like. Going back and doing that in math is critical work so that we aren't missing standards, we are repeating standards, that we're capitalizing on every single instructional minute that we have. Because like I said, that the highest leverage impact that we're gonna have is tier 1 instruction for all students.
And the conversation I've had with departments over and over again is we need a 6-12 vision, right? And that's that vertical alignment piece that Garen was talking about. It's not middle school, high school. It's what's that 6-12 vision? We have the K-5 piece and we'll be able to make that transition. But what is that 6-12 vision? So we have a clear understanding of, 6th grade teachers understand where their students are going in 7th, where they're going in 8th, where they're going in 9th, and so forth.
Great.
Mike, real quick. So in my 2.5 years on this board, that is the clearest explanation and the best explanation I have heard for improving test scores on a vertical scale. I listened to all sorts of stuff, that some of it made sense to me and some of them didn't make sense to me. What Eric and Garen just explained to me makes sense to me. So thank you both for that.
Welcome.
Any other questions on that? Okay,
So moving past that, what you'll see is a slide for each school, and I just call them strengths and vision for the future. These were really, dare I say, fun meetings that I had with each of the building leadership teams, and built this, across really what was happening at each school, because we were able to engage in the very beginnings of strategic planning. What are we doing really, really well? What's our vision for the future? And so what you'll see, I tried to sort of keep it consistent so that there's similar through lines across all 4 schools. But what's the focus? What are the strengths? What are we doing really well? And then you'll see at the bottom, what's the vision for the future? What do we really see as the big rocks? At Quaker Farms, focusing on high quality instruction and that continued team focus. One of the things that Quaker Farms does exceptionally well is look at student data as a team and understand how to implement extremely small group instruction. They're doing that really, really well, particularly in literacy. We want to replicate that model for math. refining building-based systems for responding to challenging behaviors across the elementary schools. That's the next level of work related to our school climate that I was talking about. We're seeing more and more kids that are experiencing significantly challenging behaviors in and out of the classroom. And we need to refine our systems. What does that look like in terms of our response? What does it look like from a proactive level? And what does it look like from a reactive level? Refining our school-based systems related to MTSS, students, the assistance teams, that really plays into that team focus on reviewing student data. Again, when you're talking about intervention strategies, you know, past tier 1, you have to be looking critically at data to understand what the best next step is for each kid. Laser focusing on math, leveraging that new STEM coach, reviewing that transition process like Eric and I talked about. We really want to make this seamless across all the levels. That alignment is going to be key, and I think that's where we're really going to see, you know, the effect size grow on what we're doing. And then in terms of Quaker Farms, what they see as the vision for the future, coherence, aligning people and systems, especially in the area of school climate. They see probably the highest amount of need related to challenging behaviors, as I'm sure you can imagine with the little one. Drilling down into math data, understanding how to align our intervention systems to replicate that literacy model. And supporting classroom teachers as they navigate those challenging behaviors has been, you know, work for this year, and certainly what they're, I think, yearning for more and more for next year.
Do we feel like we have enough BCBA support within Quaker, and especially Quaker, if that's where the big need is? Do we have the BCA support that they need to be successful, and they need more? Is that something we should look into?
Yeah, I think the BCBA support is always something to consider. Right now, our BCBAs are focused for our students receiving specialized services. Our school psychologists and school social workers on the other end are working with all of our students. I think right now we're in problem solving mode about what this looks like, because we're just seeing, you know, kids show up differently. And I can say in my career so far, I've seen that increase every single year. You know, I've never come to a meeting and say that it's decreasing. Needs are just increasing, for whatever reason. So I think that we're in problem solving mode right now, and we're fortunate that we have incredibly skilled support staff. Our school psychologists, our social workers, our school counselors are credible, and they're working really hard. Moving on to GOES. So again, you'll see a similar format here. Again, the continued focus on high quality instruction. If I can continue to give Amy and their Blue Ribbon School Snaps, something that Amy has done is truly make high quality instruction just a living, breathing idea at GOES. And they have a high sense of urgency around it, and they are moving forward, you know, full steam ahead. It's really incredible to see how she thinks about data, how the teachers think about data, continuing to implement their intervention systems. They monitor student data closely. It's really like every single kid has an individual plan. It's incredible. They are finding incredible success with the implementation of SRBI during their SOAR block. That's one of the things that Amy talked about this year as a real strength of what they're doing, and continuing to still refine their school-based systems. Shifting the focus of their content-based professional learning next year to math. So again, we've been focused a lot on literacy, shifting that building-based focus to math and leveraging that STEM coach. And they want to really review the implementation of specialized instruction to optimize planning. 3-5 is an interesting level. And especially a 3-5 in its own school is interesting in terms of planning for specialized instruction. Because they have a couple different models, right? They have some students that are with a classroom teacher all day long. They have some students that are rotating between classroom teachers, more. So across the building, it's really critical to look that we're optimizing the way that we're using our specialized staff, our special education teachers, our paraprofessionals. That is a focus area that Amy and I and Linda want to look at for next year. And then their vision for the future, again, you'll see a real through line here: coherence, aligning people and systems, especially in the area of providing feedback to staff. Amy's big focus next year, and she's already started working on it this year, is this the leverage of feedback. How do we give staff high quality feedback on their instruction? And how does that, you know, really adjust instruction flexibly in the moment? And then again, supporting classroom teachers as they navigate challenging behaviors. At the middle school, sorry.
Just so, and I agree with the laser focus on the math, but we'll continue to keep the same thing going on the language side, like we're not gonna let that fall off.
No.
We're not removing anything.
Yeah, and that's really important to understand, is that this doesn't mean that the foot comes off the gas on literacy. It just means that we have to move forward with math. So all of those systems in literacy remain the same. thank you for asking that question.
And I have one, we have had 3 third grade teachers be teacher of the year. Can we clone what's going on in that third grade level? I don't know, I think they're even across the hall from each other, so there's something going on there. We'd like to clone that. Any other questions for those?
So moving on to the middle school, again, you'll see, the coherence is a focus as well, and part of that is welcoming a new building principal. Our new middle school principal has already been in, meeting with staff, getting to know data, getting to know systems. He's been digging into that behind the scenes. He's, as you guys know, very excited to start. You know, a big piece of what's gonna happen next year is gonna be welcoming a new principal and having him, you know, learn the building, learn the staff. He understands that there's also work to be done, and there's work to be done right away. He's excited to do that. They're working to grow their team model. We still are fairly new into working as teams at the middle school. That's something that is new for me, because in the middle schools that I've been at, we've been in the team model for a long time. So that was fun and new information for me to understand, is the journey that we've gotten to being a team model at the middle school. Really understanding how the grade level PLCs work separate from the teams, and how we can work as vertical PLCs. That's some of what Eric was talking about with the work from the high school department chairs. They've made incredible progress this year in reducing chronic absenteeism. It's a real shining point for them in terms of what they feel the strengths are. They've thrown a lot of effort into making sure that kids are in school ready to learn. But they're also continuing to refine their school-based systems. There's a lot of work to do in terms of how we're providing intervention. That's really tricky at the middle school level. They want to explore, you know, sort of a focus in the years ahead, explore expanding their encore offerings. We have limited encore offerings, specials at the middle school, and really how to increase student engagement through voice and choice. The more opportunities we have, the more student voice and choice we'll have. And in middle school, there's really nothing more critical to getting kids to buy in. Building coherence through the K-12 department head leadership and aligning that with curriculum revisions and understanding priority standards, like Eric and I were talking about before. And again, that vision for the future is aligning people and systems, especially with the new leadership, doing a lot of curriculum writing. The 612 department heads met with all of the departments in March, and they spent an incredible amount of time looking at what the work is to be done. What's the immediate need for curriculum? How do we understand our priority standards right now? What's the next level of work that we need to do? So they're ready to focus for next year. They already know what the work is. And then that student-centered focus, that's incredibly important to the staff at the middle school. Student voice and choice, having them own their learning, personalize that learning. I think we saw the middle school presentations that the students were doing with their PIP projects. That's middle school learning at its highest level. Getting kids to engage in a project that they choose, the amount of skills that they're gonna pick up along the way is really incredible.
Any questions? I have one. I know it's not gonna happen overnight, but is there plans of introducing recess or some kind of extra physical activity? And their scheduling model, do they have plans about making sure the gym is not missed just because you do band or chorus?
Yes, and yes. Yeah, we've talked with the current staff at the middle school about that. We've talked with Nate at length about that already. And he believes and supports that, you know, in the same ways that we do. Kids need to move. That's a really long day to sit. Middle school kids sit the worst. So, you know, they need to move. And I say that as somebody that, again, I've been a middle school person. That's my heart is middle school, and, you know, they need to move.
Well, as a board, if we could support that, I know we'd be behind whatever you need.
I know they are already looking at the schedule. You know, they're gonna continue looking at that next year. But we've talked a lot about, you know, what recess could look like and making sure that all students have to meet.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And then last but certainly not least, Oxford High School. The really clear and away focus this year that will continue to be the focus is NEAS. That is a huge process. The amount of work that Heather and the NEAS committee and the staff have put into this is extraordinary. So I'm almost minimizing it by saying extraordinary. It's that big. It's huge. The undertaking, the amount they have to write, the focus that they have to do. So they really they leverage their instructional council to do a lot of that work. They've also engaged in walkthroughs this year. They've had a lot of their new teachers engage in the walkthroughs alongside department heads. So shoulder to shoulder, looking at instruction and then debriefing. What did we see? What do we want to know more about? What can I implement in my classroom tomorrow? They have dedicated common planning time for their department heads to support that alignment. So department heads are able to get into classrooms, and also work with teachers in their planning time to co-plan, to help them revise lessons, especially for our new staff, coach the new staff. Expanding our dual enrollment pathways, revising the capstone projects, they're really proud of, and they still need to refine their school-based systems. The strategic focus for the high school is through the lens of NEASC, because the recommendations for NEASC were around coherence and alignment, that we need to do more, understanding what the school improvement plan is through the district improvement plan, and how to reach those goals. That coherence is what you'll see for the entire rest of this slide. Understanding how to embed and activate the vision of the graduate through that. And then establishing those standards-based practices for curriculum, like we were talking about in terms of curriculum alignment. That's sort of future work for the high school, really NEASC driven, so I know what underline that a bunch, but.
Any questions on that?
Not specifically in high school, now, you have strength and vision for each school. Is there a vision for pulling us all together?
Next slide.
There is, oh, next slide, okay.
Spelling it,
There we go.
There
All right,
is,
Tina,
I love a good
thanks.
segue.
As you know, like last summer or last fall, we were putting together the 5 goals. We had a big conversation about the strategic operating plan. So, you know, Garen shared a lot of information. We put a lot of information in this presentation. So, and we thank you for your patience and give us a year to kind of really take a deep dive into the operations of the district. So these are 3 kind of areas that we see. And, you know, the first one is improving outcomes for all students. You know, that would be our teaching and learning, the instructional piece of our work here. We know that's the most important part. The next one, communication. Really asking stakeholders how they feel, but also telling our wonderful story that we have here in Oxford. And then the last area would be our budget, our security, our facilities, our technology. And, you know, the way and kind of listening to people and how people have viewed prior work in the strategic operating. And Garen and I, we've had a lot of conversation about this, even with our administrative council, that, you know, we think it needs to be narrowed. We think it's like 2 or 3 goal areas, maybe not 5 years, but maybe 3 years. I think the organization needs to experience success with a strategic operating plan, you know, feel it, see it. And if it becomes too big, it's hard to manage. Okay, we only have so many individuals here that can, you know, provide that management and leadership of a strategic operating plan. So, you know, obviously, you know, we have to come up here, the governance team, of a process, how we want to involve stakeholders in putting together a strategic operating plan. But our initial thought at this point are these 3 main areas, as well as for the board to think about. We don't decide right now, but, you know, maybe, you know, a shorter term, maybe 3 years, taking these 3 goal areas. Obviously, we'll have to massage them, but, you know, so then kind of really focus our resources, because we have limited resources here, you know what I mean? So we don't have unlimited, so we can just kind of do all these things. We can't. And these will be competing against each other. If you get too many, it's hard, because it just happens, you just kind of push them to the side. So you have this beautiful document and people are, why aren't you working on this? Well, you know, obviously there's not enough people to go around, there's not enough money to go around, but really these 3 we felt would be a possible landing spot for a strategic operating plan. And, you know, our suggestion was 3 years, but, you know, obviously a lot of them are 5 years, but I don't know. I think you can kind of get lost in it if it's too long. So, and we could talk more, you know, if there's a process the board wants to follow in regards to involving stakeholders, because really this has to become the driver of all our work. Everything's got to be anchored to this thing. Like you got to go to it. If it's not in there, we're not going to spend money and spend a lot of time on it. This is what we're working on for the next 3, whatever number of years. You know, that's from my experience. Like, it's not there. Sorry. You know, and that's why you need some type of stakeholder involvement. So then there's some ownership of it, but also we can hear from people, you know, that they like this idea, or no, we need you to focus on something else. Thoughts?
I will reiterate about the resources. I know what we have, we know what we have. Today, when we were listening to the different schools at the Blue Ribbon, one of the schools, they're another, I think, 3-5 or I forget if they were K-5 or not. But they said when they roll out something for math, they put 2 additional dedicated people per classroom to make sure that all the students understand. So the ones at the high level, ones at the low level, and the regular instruction, it's met. Can you imagine if we had per classroom, 2 additional resources dedicated, like math coaches or math interventionists per classroom? And they're like, we have some of the best scores in the state. I don't doubt it. If you could toss that many resources, what are they tossing, an extra 50 people, to teach math and to make sure that, math is taught at all levels? I mean, it'd be nice to be able to throw that kind of money in. They're like, we have the best scores, no one comes close. I don't doubt it. But we have to work with what we have.
Correct.
In terms of the scope, I like what you said. I like the short, I like smaller goals, not smaller goals, but less goals. I've been a part of these processes where it's, like you said, it's a nice document, it never gets to the development stage, it sits on the shelf, it collects dust, you pull it out when you need it, but it doesn't actually drive anything. So something that people obviously have to buy into, but picking our battles and not spreading ourselves too thin, especially for all the reasons we mentioned going through this.
I think the
is really
buy-in
wise.
is critical. I'm sorry to jump in again. A lot of times in education, we have these plans and they're full of edu-speak and they sound great, right? But what we really want to do is sort of like, show me the money, right? We have to be able to report out on these things with concrete, points of data, with outcomes, with, yes, this is what the strategic operating plan says, but how do we make this real for what's understanding in the classrooms with kids? What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like? And what do the numbers say? So I think that's a critical part, because we could look at this slide after, an hour of talking about all of this information about the district and, it's edu-speak, it sounds great, but what does that really look like? So the strategic operating plan can do that, I think, if we laser focus in. But we want to be able to come back and report back out on what it is that we're doing. If that makes sense.
It does. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for that, for the 2025-26 goals. I'm guessing that this will be feeding right into our 26-27 goals that we'll talk about in the fall.
What we'll do is when we have our next agenda setting, the officers will talk about how the next steps here, what the process is and how we involve stakeholders and things like that. And some timeline, we may have to come back to the board and have a bigger conversation about the process, because we want to make sure we're going the right direction.
Yeah.
But we obviously have to reach out to our stakeholders district-wide to see, right now the board may be okay with these 3, however we decide to reach out, they may have other ideas, you know what I mean? Like, we're not sure, you know what I mean? Just kind of fact check it, because if we really are going to stand behind, say, these 3 areas, particularly engaging our internal stakeholders, but our external stakeholders going to the town, we're having for financing, sort of like we did with the 10-year improvement plan, like, okay, here it is. Well, here, these are the 3 things that we will focus on the next 3 years, and this is what we're gonna need. With the data, because then we need to tell the story along the way. Where are we successful and where maybe we're dropping the ball a little bit?
And our budget's gonna have to align to it as well.
Correct, correct. That's why it can't be too big, because we're never gonna get to that type of money. That's what I'm saying. It's sort of like the 10-year facilities plan, 76 million, it's overwhelming. You know what I mean? So,
500 pages.
right,
Yeah.
so here, like, these are 3 areas, this is what we need.
Okay, moving on to the opening of a non-lab.
Well, all you.
Good evening, everyone. So a quick, just synopsis of what non-lapsing is, because I know we have some new board members. So non-lapsing fund is something that was created by state statute a few years ago that allows, boards of education to, hold up to 2%. If they have a funding left over in a fiscal year, they can hold up to 2% of their budget for that year. And then, so that happened a couple of years ago. Originally, when this first happened, my predecessor Howard had gotten the funds, he put it in central activities, and then the auditor said, no, you can't put it there. That's been a separate fund. So then he had posed the question, okay, when you say separate fund, is that like the general fund that the town owns? Or is that like our funds? And he didn't get clarification from them prior to him, leaving. So they've since clarified it. It's also been something they've kind of changed the language and done a lot of clarification in the last like year and a half. So we need to open a non-lapsing account. We already have the fund separate in our accounting system. And the funds so last year's audit's still ongoing. The funds from 2 years ago were returned to the town because we didn't have the clarification, and it was kind of the thought of better to have it with the town and not get yelled at by the state than to keep it and then have to get yelled at by the state. But I know the town is well aware of it, that money is to come back to us once we establish the account. And then whenever we finish the audit for last fiscal year, whatever funds we have that the board, verifies to move over, will come and sit in that account. So it'll be a completely separate bank account, that in a completely separate fund, and the allocation of which, if and when we ever use it, is just like whenever we're using a grant, we just basically are going to take money from that fund and put it towards general fund expenses.
Anyone have any questions on the concept? Okay, do we have a motion?
We'll bring out a 23rd, bring out, right, they'll have to create it.
Yeah, we just, we'll have everything done.
Okay,
Very good.
great.
Okay, we'll bring that back on the 23rd.
And moving on to audience of citizens comments on the workshop topics. Hearing none, do we have a motion for executive session?
I hereby move for enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing a proposed moratorium of understanding with the Oxford Administrators Association regarding the elementary school principal's equipment as acting principal at Quaker Farms, and I further move that the board invite Superintendent Ralph Marino and Assistant Superintendent of Schools Garen Mullen into executive session.
We have a second. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? We enter in at 7:28.